Welcome to today's Welcome to today's masterclass. My name is Lisa Richter, and I will be your host today. Sandra. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CSIA, we are a global nonprofit trade association with over 500 member companies in 35 countries. Sandra. To highlight just a few of CSIA's many member benefits, the CSIA Best Practices Manual guides control system integration companies in the setup and running of a solid company. Any SI company will benefit from the BPs, but earning the CSIA certification is a confirmation by a third party that you have deployed them correctly. For partner members, CSIA offers an ecosystem to grow their SI programs, understand their customers' pain points, monitor industry trends, and share their thought leadership. A trusted resource of qualified integrators and suppliers, the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange helps SIs, industry suppliers, and manufacturers connect and do business. For SIs and partners, it provides a platform to support your content and SEO marketing efforts, position your company and C-suite as thought leaders, and nurture prospects by providing a credible source of information about your company and its products. Finally, a reminder that in 2021, you have increased access to knowledge sharing, community building, and networking throughout the year when you join or renew your CSIA membership. We're committed to delivering extremely relevant content to system integrators while providing partner members access to a highly engaged audience. To that end, CSIA has been delivering weekly virtual events on a broad range of topics and experiences. For more information about CSIA, membership, virtual events, and sponsorship and advertising opportunities, contact us. Next slide. At this time, I would like to introduce John Sullivan, who will be the moderator for this event. John, over to you.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Emerging Leaders Committee and what it is that we're doing here, just to kind of get a little bit of context. So, the Emerging Leaders Committee is made up. Currently, there's a steering committee that's helping drive the growth in the committee. So, myself, John Sullivan, I'm currently leading the committee. We have Keith, Brad, Darren, and Greg currently as part of the full committee. Our goal here is to try to provide kind of guidance and direction for the overall group, to try to help build the group and the attendance and help drive valuable content. We are actually currently looking at some other people to be part of the steering committee. So if there's interest in there, definitely feel free to reach out. So what is the Emerging Leaders Committee? What are we trying to do? So realistically, the goal here is we're trying to develop content for aspiring leaders. There are people that are coming into the future of the executive positions with inside CSA. We're basically helping provide content and growth options for the people who are kind of growing inside their organization. That's people from starting in the transition from individual contributor into more of a leadership role, as well as people who are just taking on a lot more leadership roles. So the goal here is to find people who are newer to leadership roles inside their organizations and provide content that can help them grow. How are we doing that? So we're driving content relevant to growth and leadership roles. This is this panel's a great example. Actually, these panel members were planning to be a panel at one of the canceled CSIA conferences, and so our goal here is to find content that's going to be helpful in growing those people. And then the next thing we're really trying to do is build a group of interested and passionate people to learn from each other and provide resources. So, we strongly believe as part of the steering committee that a strong group of people are going to provide a network that's going to help you find the things that you need to grow, and then generate the connections inside that network that exist in an individual's development. So what's coming next? We're going to continue to do more panels. Actually, we've got a happy hour at the end of this to kind of break out into small groups and get some engagement, as well as if you have any thoughts on content that's super relevant or interesting for you, feel free to hit it in the chat or reach out to me directly. We're looking at also doing a small group book club focused on leadership and growth topics. This is going to be orchestrated through the control systems group and the LinkedIn group that are linked below. That's also a great place to come and talk about best practices, as well as sharing and looking for connections. If you're looking for recommendations or problems or issues, these are going to be really great communities to help kind of have those sounding boards of a member of peers. Additionally, that we are looking at a session of the 2022 CSI Executive Conference in Denver. If you're interested in being part of any of this or kind of involved at all, I highly recommend joining both the CSIA community and the LinkedIn group. I will include the links for those in the chat for this so that you can don't have to write that whole long link down and can get something a little bit shorter. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here and introduce the panelists that we have. Joining us, we've got 3 panelists that have agreed to provide some context and as well as kind of discuss their leadership roles. So first we have Andrew Palmberg. Andrew has been in the control industry for 25 years. He's worked with technical systems and he's got a depth of knowledge both in control panel, network design, instrumentation, motor control centers, and a heavy focus in the wastewater industry. Andrew has a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Purdue University. Also joining us is Becca. Becca is a continuous improvement, quality, and safety professional with Gray Solutions, which was formerly Stone Technologies. She has over 10 years of experience with safety, quality, lean process improvements, training, leadership, and change management. And she also was a recipient of the CSIA Rising Star Award in 2019. And our final panelist is Keith. Keith is an engineering manager at Huffman Engineering. Huffman Engineering's been a certified CSIA member since 2005. Keith started as an entry-level position of building control panels, and he's grown into a seat with the Huffman Engineering leadership team. He's a graduate of Missouri University of Science and Technology with a degree in electrical engineering. He's been named the Control Engineering Leaders Under 40 class of 2012, and he also received the CSIA Rising Star Award in 2014. So definitely a big thanks to you guys for joining us and providing your kind of insight there. We'll kind of dig in here. Andrew, can you just tell me a little bit about your current role and how you got there and a little bit more of your background?
Sure. My current role is engineering manager. And I started at TSI 25 years ago doing field service. I got my degree in mechanical engineering, and we were a much smaller company at that time. And the owners were a little bit apprehensive of having somebody right out of engineering school go into programming or engineering. So I had to do a little bit of field service work. And then I gradually moved into doing more engineering and programming work and transitioned into a project manager after about 8 years at TSI. And then in 2014, I had the opportunity to become engineering manager at TSI. And I oversee a group of approximately 17 employees, and I oversee the drafting department and the engineering group, which does primarily hardware design.
So digging a little more into that, are there kind of any routines or philosophies or things that you've developed in order to guide your team? What's kind of your management style and how is that kind of adapted coming from your kind of your growth through the organization?
So the management style is a little bit of collaborative, a little bit of persuasive and participative. What I'm trying to do is develop enough independence in the group that they are comfortable making decisions on their own, but I'm a resource and I like to be involved with some of the decision making when problems come up that are a little bit difficult. A couple of things I like to use, I have a weekly meeting where I go over what everyone's workload is for the week and some of the issues that everyone might be having. I usually describe a topic that is relevant to the team. So if we have to go over some standards or go over some new procedures that were just introduced in the company, I like to review them there so everyone's familiar with what's going on. I also have I use Microsoft Project, and I set up a planner which tracks all of the deliverables, important deliverables for the engineering group. So I can just get an idea where what's going on with the team and make sure that nothing is getting behind as far as deliverables.
Hey, Keith, we'll kind of jump over to you. I know you have a kind of similar transition from, starting at the lowest level and moving into a leadership position. How has your experience maybe been similar or different, and how has that kind of shaped some of your, management styles and how you work with your team?
Sure. Yeah. So I started in the beginning. I was one of those guys that when I got interviewed, I remember Howard asking me the question, "Do you know what a PLC is?" And I had no idea what a PLC was. And then here I am 25 years later, and I'm the engineering manager. So yeah, when I started, I didn't know anything about controls really, except for kind of theoretical stuff. But I was very technical, helped build control panels, helped do some of the CAD, started getting into some of the programming, whether PLCs and the operator interfaces, kind of got into database, networking, got just anything technical. I was just like, yeah, just keep handing it to me. I love this stuff. I love learning that. So for me as a leader, I love the title of this session of, growing into a leadership role, because for me, it was very much growing into a leader. Some people are born leaders. I was not one of those. So I definitely had to grow into that role. And yeah, so my current role is engineering manager, and what that entails for me is just, as far as for the company, kind of responsible for making sure technically that all the staff, the engineering staff has, the skills and the tools that they need to do the jobs, and then just making sure we're staying top of technology and just, forming those relationships. As far as like leadership style, I'm a very relational person. So that is kind of my style of just being relational. So with, I have about 10 to 12 younger engineers that are underneath me that I, what we call coach. So I'm kind of their mentor. But it's very much relational. Just, I'm very much like just, I'll walk into their office, talk, just find out, hey, what's going on outside of the office? Because I find, that plays into, how things are going. They could be having a terrible time outside of the office, and I don't, the stress alone of the job itself, that just doesn't help. So it's just, having an understanding of people. That's really, people's the hardest part of the job, is just, because I kind of like technically, people are like a unstable PID loop, constantly trying to tune them all the time, keep them tuned. So, you're like, you think you got them tuned right and they're happy, and then next thing you know, they're out of tune again, and it's like something completely different. So that's got, technically little scenario.
Awesome. And Becca, you come from a much different background, the non-technical kind of background in this. Tell us a little bit how that might have shaped, how you transitioned your role and how you can continue to contribute inside your organization.
Sure, thanks. Keith loved the joke. I even got it as a non-engineer, so well done. Correct. I'm not a traditional manager. I don't have any people reporting directly to me, so a leader in a different perspective, and then not an engineer. So currently, I am working for a company called Gray Solutions. They just recently acquired Stone Technologies, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. My title is to be determined, but I'm in charge of safety and quality and continuous improvement. And then recently I've been given the role of chairperson of the integration effort. So I get to help run the team that is merging our two worlds together between Stone and Gray. So it's a lot. It's overwhelming. It's exciting. It's a new challenge. I'm very excited for the opportunity. So as far as management style, very similar to Keith in that to me, it's all about relationships, building relationships with people and understanding how they work, getting their perspectives and their ideas, listening a lot and running those through. So it's a little bit about me.
So are there any particular strengths that you've found that have been really relevant for this role, or anything as you kind of transition to this, different type of leadership role? What are the things that have really done well for you?
I think not being afraid to try, right? Just putting yourself out there, even though you're not an expert or the best at whatever it is, trying and listening. Listening to people and hearing their ideas and their perspectives and their issues and helping resolve those items. So that's what I think my biggest is, just that lack of fear to try something new and exciting, and talk to people, build those relationships like Keith said.
Yeah, one of the things Becca said, listening, we do this thing at Huffman Engineering where, technically it's like listen, learn it, do it well, then pass it on. But I kind of use that as well as when it comes to people, like listening to people. And that's, one of my strengths is definitely listening. If you knew me like growing up in high school and stuff, I was pretty shy, definitely not an outgoing person at all. So I was always listening, and that's kind of helped me as I grew. Just being able to listen to what people are saying, because sometimes it's easy to just be having a conversation and not hearing them, but not really hearing them. So that's been really key for me, is to be able to listen to what people are actually saying.
And to add on to that, I think it's also repeating back or writing down what you think you heard. Many times I think I hear you correctly, and it's not. So that's another part of being a leader. You put yourself out there and you're going to screw up. You're going to hear things wrong. You're going to do things incorrectly, and not being afraid to do that, I think, is a big part of it as well.
It was totally unrehearsed, but yeah, I feel like Becca and I are like bouncing out. So that part about writing things down and just, repeating back to, what you heard. Because a lot of times early on, I found myself like, yeah, I listened well and I thought I understood what they're saying, but it wasn't. And then, I think somewhere along the line I picked up from someone, or hearing something or reading something that, hey, just repeat back what you heard. And I actually started doing that with kids too, because like it seems like oftentimes I misunderstand what my kids are telling me, but if I like repeat it back, they're like, oh, okay, yep, you got it, Dad. That's what I was telling you.
Andrew, has there been a similar theme for you on the listening, or is there a different approach you've taken that's been really effective? Or
Well, I think the listening probably comes a little more challenging to me because I like to talk. And so I've always been somebody that likes to engage with my coworkers and talk about stories and personal stuff with them. And it's interesting. That was one of what I considered a strength when I was starting this role. Like, wow, I'm going to be really social, and I'm going to be able to engage with all my employees. And it's a certain strength if you can find a reasonable cutoff point for when to have a good conversation. A lot of times after work is a better time to have those in-depth conversations. And so what I realized a couple times, I was talking a lot and asking people how their weekends were, and spending a lot of time when people come in my office chatting. And what kind of learned was that I could do that to a certain degree, but really focusing my job was to really figure out what problem they had, and try to get to the point as quick as I could without being rude, but spend a little less time socializing and a little bit more time trying to identify what their concern was, or the problems that the employees had, because I wasn't initially doing a very good job addressing those concerns. I was having a lot of fun being social and talking to the employees. And so that was a little bit of a challenge to redirect my style, because it's something that I really want to be social all the time, but I've learned in a role where you're upper management and you're trying to get efficiency out of your employees, you're better served really trying to focus on the things, like Becca and Keith said, listening to what the employees have to say, and then trying to make sure you address what they are asking you to do. A lot of times it's difficult for newer employees to phrase what they want you to do. And so you have to find their style. And so I've really noticed with the engineers that we hire that are new to this process, I I hear what they're asking, but they don't even know the right questions to ask. And so there's a challenge there in really stepping back and understanding those employees to address their concerns.
Cool. One administrative thing I forgot, but if people have questions or want us to elaborate on anything, feel free to use the chat. Like definitely engage in the chat and kind of go through there. So, but Andrew, I wanted to dig into one of those things you said. You know, one of the things you had to do was find their style. Tips and advice for how you go about finding the style for your team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's an easy silver bullet for doing that. I think it's probably a little bit of making sure that your ego is kind of at a lower level. You really want to be able to understand their employees. One of the challenges that I had as an engineering manager, I'm responsible for performance reviews and figuring out how to make people more efficient, enjoy this job more, and to make sure the quality's there. Those are some of the metrics that I have for my team. And the initial process is just learning how to do the performance review. And then you identify some areas where the employee isn't necessarily as strong. And that also gives you an opportunity to see their style too when you're doing those reviews. And also working with those employees day after day in the projects that they have. But the what you initially might see as an employee's style, it changes after you know that employee too. So it's being open to recognizing things and realizing that I thought this person was really assertive and creative, but their strengths are more organizational and they do a much better job with really getting the details of the job done well. And so you have to be adaptive too, and recognizing that you may identify a certain employee as a certain style, and over time, from anecdotal evidence, other coworkers or talking to them in reviews, you might find that they work well with different parameters. The other thing I've been doing too is in the performance reviews, I'm trying to identify, have the employee try to work through their challenges to come up with some creative ways on how to improve their process. Because it's tempting as a manager to try to force your way of how you do your project work into a certain point. Well, if you just are more organized, you do a better job. And that's not necessarily the case, because some employees just aren't going to be more organized the way that I am. And it was interesting. I had an employee that is kind of a messy desk. You know, he can find things, but he has to work a little bit hard to find them. And one day I came over to his desk and I said, "Hey, I think it would really help if we just organize your desk. So next week I'm going to go and file all your paperwork and get everything neat. So you're going to be a better employee." And then I thought about it for a week and I thought, that's not going to help him at all. That's what I would do. And so I just sat down with him and I asked him, you know, "Hey, is there a better way to figure out how to find what you need, or make sure you don't miss the loose ends?" And we came up with a system where he had he was using OneNote, and he's just tracking things in OneNote and Planner now. He still has a messy desk, but now he can remember what he forgot to do. And that wasn't the problem at all. And so there's a temptation to look at people's styles and to try to adapt them to what works for you. And it's really problematic because all people are different, and it's a little bit easier to try to see what someone's style is and then coach to their strengths, because it's really difficult to change someone. That's not very practical.
Cool, thank you. Kind of taking a little bit of another shift here, but let's start to talk about some of our challenges and pieces. We talked a little bit about communication and listening and figuring things out, but you know, Keith, I'll jump over to you. You know, what has been your biggest challenge with kind of transitioning from the individual contributor into the more manager role? What did you do to overcome that challenge? What was the hardest hurdle for you?
You know, I probably had several, but the one that comes to mind for me is, I came up very technically oriented. So, you know, that was a passion of mine of just, you know, doing the technical work. So, you know, shifting to more, you know, not so much me doing the work, but having other people do that. You know, there's always that, unfortunately, that perfectionism that creeps in where, you know, inside, you know, you watch, I'm sure everybody's seen this and done this where like, you know, they have people that they're working with and they do something and they're like, you know, just kind of clenching their fists where like, that's driving me nuts because I know it could be better or it would be my way. So that's, you know, the biggest thing is like, you know, it's not about me. It's not, you know, as a technical person, that's really hard. So being able to let go of that and say, you know what, you know, the bigger picture, seeing that bigger picture of like, you know, yeah, it's not about me doing that. It's, you know, if I have a team of people that can do just as good of work, we're better off in the long run. So just, you know, and we're a small enough company that I still, you know, I still can satisfy my technical needs as far as like getting into a little bit of the nitty gritty and just doing some of that. But that was, at least for me, you know, growing into a more manager type position of, you know, not doing so much of the technical and kind of shifting to, you know, hey, helping others, you know, coaching them. You know, I liked what Andrew said about, you know, understanding them and coaching to their strengths and not trying to change them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, were there any challenges as you were kind of transitioning from a coworker to a manager of people? Like, how did you navigate that kind of transition? Any advice there?
Really just not try to be someone else, just be yourself. You know, often I had coworkers that, you know, I truly respect, really taught me a lot. And just, you know, really just, you know, it's not, again, it's like not to take things personal. It's not about myself, but, you know, just, yeah, come back to me on that one. I'm trying to think of how I want to word that, but it's not coming to mind.
Okay, Andrew, you had a similar transition. Any thoughts on going from kind of coworker to manager? Was that a challenge that you had as well?
It was. One of the things that I had to learn to do was when you're in a position where you have you're overseeing a team of individuals, and then you're also getting productivity and budget conscious projects to fruition. You're also beholden to the managers above you that are really looking for completely different things sometimes than you are as a team leader, but you still have to be sensitive to upper management's requirements. And a lot of times there are some really unreasonable and kind of harsh metrics that you have to balance. You have to be kind of transitioning between, you don't want to pass that information into your team, but you also have to motivate your team to be more productive. If you're not meeting numbers for budgets, if the engineering hours are over on the projects that you're working on, you're trying to get more work, you're in a competitive market. And really the way to do that is to get your team more efficient. But you also don't want to burn your employees out, but you also want to be sensitive to your upper managers, so you're not taking their concerns lightly. So there's a real challenge in being that lightning rod for upper management, and you know, oftentimes like, you need to get your team to do better, and to pass that information and motivate your team in a way where you're not getting chewed up in that process, because it's a stressful place to be sometimes. And like Keith said, if you don't take it personally, if you realize that the more that you look at the job as, hey, I get to take these individuals and really make them into very productive and happy members of my team, but I also get to insulate them from a certain level of some of that frustration at the top. That reconciling that was really challenging to me, and to get a thick skin, because there are sometimes when somebody's frustrated at you, it's hard not to take it personally, especially when, like he said, I came from a more technical background. I was very proud of the work I did as a project manager, as an engineer. I did really, really well in all the jobs that I did management for. And I was very proud of very few negative comments about any work I did. And then all of a sudden transitioning into engineering manager, there's some criticism that's levied against you. Hey, you're not doing well in this, you need to do this. And so that was a big challenge. And I feel like that enough time has gone by, you shrug your shoulders, you listen to what people are saying that are trying to improve you, and realize that, hey, it's a business, and we really need to make sure everybody pulls their weight and does a good job. And it's really important to make your team better so your company's better.
I would just love to interject, John, if that's okay. Even though I don't have direct reports, I'm still leading a team, right? So I have to lead us through to a goal. And one of my mentors told me the best way to lead is without a carrot or a stick. And I loved that, and it has stuck with me for years, because you want to figure out a way for people to want to do what you want them to do, right? So trying to figure out what's in it for them, what drives them. We all came to work to be successful in our companies and as individuals. And so figuring out those relationships and how people work, and then helping them understand what's in it for them, right? So but that carrot stick, I love that, right? Like, how do you get people to want to do what you want to do? And that's my constant challenge. And it doesn't work for everybody all the time, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the biggest benefits of being in a manager type position is seeing the successes that your team has, and just being able to see that enjoyment that they get out of that. I think that's definitely one of the benefits for sure.
And then, Becca, back over to you. Were there any, unique challenges that you had transitioning this role and how did you overcome them?
Always challenges. Yeah. So I would say my biggest challenge with the role I'm in right now, first it was joining Stone in January of 2020, working from home. Most of my coworkers are in Missouri, right? But we're all over the place. How do you get to know each other, right? And now I've only been with the company a year, and now we're acquired by Gray Solutions. So now there's another 85 employees I need to get to know. And so I think the biggest challenge is getting to know the people and earn their trust and respect while trying to execute a goal. And it boils down to communication, right? So how do we communicate with each other, especially with this dynamic of a remote workforce, which I know all of us got the joy of experiencing, but it definitely adds another challenge. So I think for me personally, that's my biggest challenge, is getting to know the people, getting to know how they work, getting to know what motivates them, while trying to execute a really challenging objective. So to overcome that, I think it's just listening a lot, and kind of going back to that, listening a lot, repeating back, writing things down, double checking to make sure we're on the same page.
One of the other challenges I was thinking about was, like I mentioned, I'm not a natural born leader. So for me to just learn and grow leadership skills was something that I definitely needed to take on that challenge. And I love challenges. So that was something for me to just, okay, I'm not a natural born leader, but, always, my boss, Howard, he's and Wendy, they have books and books about, management and leadership, and there's always amazement like how many different books there are on stuff, and there's just so much information out there. It's actually sometimes overwhelming, but actually sometimes a blessing too, because like we'll be reading a book together, and I'll be like, that is some good information. So just continuously educating myself, and just knowing personally, I know that I'm not perfect, and so I can always get better. So just
yeah. Were there any other like formal leadership training classes that you attended, or any materials or references that you found particularly helpful as you grew into this position?
So I'm very fortunate and thankful for Huffman Engineering for giving me the opportunity to grow as an individual, as a leader. I'm part of the leadership team, and as part of that leadership team, we actually are doing some training right now, or kind of some coaching ourselves. So like, not only are we coaching our staff and stuff, but we're ourselves are coaching, or getting coaching on how to be better leaders and how to lead this company, how to grow the company. So we actually have formal, or not formal, but we have paid training that we're engaged in to help us continue to grow.
What about other books? You mentioned there were a lot of books you kind of read along the way. It also sounds like you did a little bit of mentorship internally. Let's talk a little more about some of those other resources and how you developed them and how you found them and which ones you found the most helpful.
Yeah, so we, as a leadership team, we would kind of do like a little book club amongst ourselves, and we've read several different books. Right before, like last year, we were kind of it's Unstoppable Teams was one that we were reading. It's kind of a little bit of a story within the dialogue, and just it was real interesting read about. Oh, I won't go into all the details, but anyways, it seems like every book is like that that we've come across, that we've read together, and the beauty of having like a book club or several people that are reading it together is like, I may read it and get this out of it, and then my colleague might be like, oh, well, when I read that, this is what I got out of it, and it's like different perspectives. So that's been really nice to just really have to go through it with other people, kind of having almost like our peer groups that we have for, CSI has a lot of peer groups that that you can be a part of. And that's, I know Brad, who's also on this Emerging Leaders Committee, we've gotten to know each other over the last few conferences, and it's just been, it's been really nice to just, talk and bounce ideas and hear, what are you going through and things like that. So, but now I forgot what your original question was, John.
That's okay. We're just talking about resources and ways you found to grow. And so I want to throw that over to Andrew or Becca as well. Were there any kind of resources or things that you utilized to grow that you found particularly useful that you want to share?
I really did find the CSIA best practices instrumental in making me a better leader. One of the things I distilled from that kind of a high level idea is that that your practices are never rock solid, that you should always be evaluating all your processes and figuring out if they're working. And then if they're not working, figure out how to adjust the process to try to get the desired result. And I think as a kind of tying that back to my own job here, one of the things that I'm always looking at is, am I doing a good job for where the company is now? Am I accomplishing what I need to for the employees that I'm working with? So I'm always trying to adjust what I'm doing at work. It's like a work in progress. So it's never like a final, this job in itself, it needs to adjust all the time based on what the market's doing, what's going on with my employees. Like Keith mentioned, like a P&ID loop or PID loop where there's constant things happening with your employees, personal things going on, dissatisfaction with the career after a number of years. So I'm always looking at those factors too, to try to see if I can get like recently we had a project engineer who really wanted to be a project manager. And so he's taken some classes through an online college, and the goal is to get him into another career path so he can actually do what he really wants to do. And I'm losing an engineer from my team, but we're gaining another manager here at TSI that's got practical experience. And so just looking at that at a high level stance, that CSIA best practices is really, really valuable. Just doing my day-to-day job here.
And Becca, how about you? Any resources or books or training classes or peer groups or anything else that you have felt that have been really good for you?
There are so many out there. I attended one here in the Northwest from it's HPAC, High Performance Enterprise Consortium. I had to look it back up. And so it was lean and the human element. And it was a really good, tangible, hands-on training. But I would say there's so many podcasts, there's so many books, there's so many things out there. For me, it's people though. So it's been my CSIA peer group. It's been being on the best practice committee and sharing ideas with those people. It's been getting to know my coworkers. Those relationships and learning from humans directly, I think is invaluable. Like that's the best way to learn from people and really get a firm understanding of what works and what doesn't, and what struggles have we all gone through and what did we learn. So you can't beat people. You got to spend time with people.
And then kind of jumping back into the challenges, we kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there, but jumping back into the challenges, Andrew, you shared the story about, the messy desk and everything else. Keith or Becca, have you have any examples of spots where, you had a similar messy desk situation where you were approaching it wrong and kind of caught yourself and were able to step back, or where hindsight kind of helped you see a better way to approach some things?
I'm sure there are probably tons of different examples that, but trying to speak to one, somewhat recently, we had a new staff member that definitely operated in a different way than I did. And, when you're on a project and it's, you're, on a startup and it's just, pretty intense, the customers, saying, hey, we need to get this up and running. And now you've got a staff member that's just like kind of going off the rails, and it's, just not, it was, it was challenging for me to like be able to like, cause that's, I don't operate like that. So, it's hard for me to like put myself in their shoes and know what they're going through. But really that was, kind of like, Becca's talking about, it's like people, it's like, understanding them and seeing where they're coming from. And, come to find out, like, this person's just, they've had tough life going, coming into this. And, just having that understanding and not, being so, not thinking like how I would, but it's like thinking about how they would instead.
Yeah, great. And then I guess Keith, kind of, taking a little bit of different direction, what are some of the ways that you've personally changed or had personal adaptations that have been really important to you to be successful in your role?
Yeah, so for me personally, like I said before, I'm not a natural born leader. So one of the ways I kind of challenged myself to be able to kind of grow as a leader was like outside of work. I really challenged myself to, get into leadership type roles. So good example is my wife and I, when our kids were in elementary school, we somehow got suckered into that, president of the PTO. At that time it was a little bit more my wife than me, but then as I got into it, I was like, okay, because like I said, I was not like leadership and being a leader type person was not really me. I like doing technical stuff. So that was a challenge. And then, what I learned from that was like, hey, this is good. I'm like learning how to deal with, other people, how to coordinate things, how to, different skills that I didn't really have. So I challenged myself again, like, kids got into high school. So kids are a good source for like being able to insert yourself into some, leadership role. So at the high school level right now, I'm currently, I'm going on my 4th or 5th year as president of our booster club. And that's a whole nother, it's a whole nother challenge of like, but there are things that I pick up from that directly relate over to, how I, fulfill being the engineering manager. There are things that I learned that I didn't, probably wouldn't have learned doing this role here at the, as an engineering manager. So, so just, personally outside of the office, just, putting yourself into positions of leadership. There's many opportunities. There's always people asking for, because like that booster club thing, it was like, I remember sitting in there with about 10 other people, and the athletic director's like, hey, would anybody step up and be president of this and keep this thing going. And of course, it's like crickets. So it's kind of like, okay, I think I don't know what I'm doing. I think I heard Becca say, just not being afraid to just try it, just, putting yourself out there. So like, I don't know anything about running a booster club, but hey, I think there's some good things that will come out of this. I feel like, for me, it's growth for me. It's at the same time you're doing something good for your community. So yeah.
And then Becca, I'll jump over to you. Kind of building on things there. So if you had one piece of advice to give this room of emerging leaders, what's one piece of takeaway that someone should either go try or do, or things that you really think stuck with you and helped you through?
Well, definitely the people aspect. But I know when I was younger, I was really tied up into titles. I wanted to run the world. I wanted to be the boss of all the things. And, the title was so important to me, to be a manager, to then be a vice president, to then be the president. And the older and wiser I get, the more I realize those aren't always great positions to be in. And you can do great things without those titles. So I think for me, it was just that to learn that you don't have to have the title, you don't have to run the company to make a huge impact. And to Keith's point, you can do the same thing in your community and in your world, right? So we don't have to be the president of the United States to make an impact. We can go out there and do things every day. So again, it comes down to people, building relationships with other people, being kind, treating others the way we want to be treated. Those just key factors are what's going to help you to be a great leader and find success in life.
Andrew, same question over to you. What's one piece of advice that people can take away here? One thing you just recommend people try or do as they're making these changes?
So one of the things that you want to do is own the job that you transition into. So it's tempting to look at if you're at a company and you've been there for a little while and you're taking over a job for someone that had the role before you, it's tempting to just transition to that role and think, I'm going to do everything this individual did before me, and that's how I'm going to run this job. But you're going to bring different skill sets to the position. You're going to bring a completely different definition sometimes to what your role is there. And so really define that role in your own mind, come up with some KPIs, things that you want to accomplish when taking that role. Obviously, there's certain things that are going to be necessary for that position in order for it to work, but there's different ways of making that position work for who you are as a person. So really examine, don't have any expectations that it's going to look the same as whoever had it before you, and be very creative about how you take that role, because you might really be able to add a different perspective to it than the person that had it before you. So just be creative when you take that new position.
And Keith, same thing from you. Any one piece of advice people should take away from this?
Yeah, so maybe the one thing is what I mentioned before about just listen, learn it, do it well, pass it on. So with the people that are, reporting to you or that you're coaching or mentoring, just listening to them and, learning about them and just, doing, trying to improve and do things well and passing it on, as well as, listening to the people above you. So like, the owners of the company that have, given you this opportunity, like listening to what they're saying, just, really just everybody below and above, just, and even on the same level with you, they're never going to know everything. So, take advantage of, what other people bring to the table, and, because they, definitely may hear something differently than you, and it's just a positive, just, to focus on those positives.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to open up if anyone has any other questions they want to ask here before we transition to the social half hour. Just while we're doing that, one of the things we're going to do here, again, this group really is about engagement. You know, one of the things that you probably heard a lot of people talking about, you know, Keith especially talked about how having some of those groups, Becca talked about her peer group with CSIA. You know, we really do believe that the people who are looking to grow, you're going to be best off growing with people around you that want to grow. And so one of the things that we really hope to do as part of the Emerging Leaders group is to build that community and to have those resources that you can reach out to. And one of the ways we're going to try to facilitate it at this particular junction is to have a few breakout rooms. There's no way that all of us can sit and talk and be social and have any level of actual connection. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just throw it into a couple breakout rooms and just kind of allow people to kind of engage and chat. If you can't stay, that's fine, no problem. If you can, great. Feel free to just hang out and introduce yourself and talk a little bit with the group. This engagement is going to continue. The biggest thing that's going to be is a book club. So we're looking at forming some smaller pods of people, between 4 and 6 people, who are going to read a book that we're kind of selecting to kind of build that network of people and leaders in which you can grow with. And so that's really what we wanted to facilitate here. And this is kind of a way for us to do that. So yeah.
Brad, you wanted to say something?
Oh, yeah. Hey, John, real quick. Do you want to, I saw at one of your slides, I thought, do we want to give a plug for the next in-person executive conference next year? I know it's almost a year out, but do we want to make sure people are aware that, hey, this is location, these are the dates. And I think that we've had some really strong breakout sessions at the executive conference. I want to make sure people are aware come 2022 when this event is taking place.
Yeah, so I have a slide on that. Just a second. Let me pull it up if you just give me 2 seconds.
And John, while you're doing that, if we want to be part of a book club or something like that, should we email you or tell you in that LinkedIn group I saw the link for? How do you want to be notified?
We're gonna at this time we have a lot more engagement on the LinkedIn group than we do on the controlsys.org. So we're gonna run both the LinkedIn group and the controlsys with duplicate information at this point. Long term, our hope is to transition everything over to the controlsys into the CSIA website and the community forum there, because it's got a lot more tools than LinkedIn has that work really well for this group. But in the short term, you can join either place, and I'll get you all of the relevant information and kind of make that connection happen. Lisa, thankfully, put the links for both of those. I highly recommend you join both of them, but certainly join at least one of them if you want to be engaged. And from there, the information will kind of flow out.
So maybe, John, while you're looking for that slide, I've got a couple slides to share too, to kind of close us on out, to kind of give us the official ending here. But as John said, stick around if you want to hang out and chit chat for a little bit of a happy hour. But on behalf of CSIA, I would like to thank Andrew, Becca, Keith, and John for this informative discussion. I'd also like to thank the Emerging Leaders Committee for this event, and of course, thank you for attending. I'd like to remind you that a recording will be available for viewing within the next couple of days, and please visit the CSIA website to see past virtual events you may have missed. And be sure to bookmark the CSIA events calendar so you don't miss any upcoming events. The last thing I want to share with you is contact info. Sandra, if you want to give us one more that last slide with my contact info on there. Well,
that's not available. It's not available.
Okay, no worries, no worries. I did put my LinkedIn profile link in the chat. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always available to answer your questions or help you connect with different people or whatever you need. So now I'm going to turn it back over to John. Hopefully he's located his slide and he can talk a little bit about next year's event.
Yeah, so CSIA Executive Conference is going to be June 27th through the 30th in Denver, Colorado. That's where I call home, so looking forward to seeing you guys all here. It's going to be at the Hilton Denver City Center, so just kind of 2 blocks away from the downtown Denver area. The last 2 events, the event this year and the event last year were both canceled, so this is the 2022 event. This panel was actually supposed to be part of the 2020 event, and then it got delayed to here. So, this is going to be a spot where we're definitely going to try to engage. you know, the CSI Executive Conferences tends to be a lot of the C-suite people. We're hoping that through the growth of this community and the growth of these peer groups, that we can get a lot of the, you know, emerging and growing leaders in your community at this event as well. So definitely look forward to having you there. So that's what I've got there. Oop. Am I still sharing, or did that go away?
You're still sharing.
No, it won't stop. There it goes. Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks again, everyone. Again, if you stick around, we do want to kind of engage here. We're going to go here to breakout groups in just a few minutes. So